You know when you get something on the brain, you start to notice that something? And I couldn't help but notice everyone that was driving these things, not just Tahoes and Suburbans, but any kind of big body-on-frame SUV, luxury ones particularly. They're all like yummy mommies driving these things with their rugrats in the back, and they're taking them to like karate class or like ballet or wherever they're going. And it started to really piss me off. It's like, why would you buy this much? You know, the Greeks call it thrasas, this much like gusto. What do you need that much for to go to ballet class? But then it dawned on me, it actually presents an opportunity rather than more size. It's the opportunity to take the whole family out to a place you normally would never go, like National Forest roads, and have a hell of a lot of fun with the family. Granted, there's no family around here, but you and I are going to do just that. National Forest roads in a brand new $60,000 Tahoe with less than 1,000 miles on it. I find it only fitting to come to a place with a very big expanse to talk very big numbers. This is the 116-inch wheelbase Chevrolet Tahoe, which means it's not a Chevrolet Suburban, it's not the GMC Yukon Denali, and it's definitely not the Cadillac Escalade. But fear not, friends, it's 320 horsepower at 5,400 RPM and 335 pound-feet of torque at 4,000 RPM. So now we have some elevation change, but this time we're going uphill over some dips, actually. And this is where torque comes into play. So we're not really dealing with the 320 horsepower, we're dealing with the 335 pound-feet of torque. And there really is never an instance where you're feeling you're out of torque here. So that brings up an interesting question. So the Escalade and the Denali, you can get the 6.2 V8. That has 460 pound-feet of torque. This is 335. Both come in around the same time, about 4,000 RPM, what we talked about. But out here, going up a grade, there's tons of rocks, a couple of ruts, and I'm only at about 1,500 to 2,000 RPM to get enough torque to get up this grade. So I can only imagine what an extra 125 pound-feet of torque would do in a situation like this. Well, 125 pound-feet of torque plus off-road tires. So those of you that have been watching the show for a while know this is not exactly our first rodeo off-road. In fact, we've done this trick twice before. The first time was in Arizona at Nissan's Proving Grounds with the Infiniti QX56. Then we went to Alabama and we took a Porsche Cayenne S. That's the 400 horsepower V8. We not only went off-road, we actually went swimming with that vehicle. Am I trying to compare my lowly Chevy with the mighty Porsche and the Infiniti? Not exactly, although this ain't no slouch. What I'm here to point out is the rear suspension. If you guys have seen the Mean Gene films, he showed you both the Cayenne and the Infiniti, and both of those have an independent rear suspension setup. This has the live axle, just like they've had on Tahoes since the beginning of Tahoes, and just like they've had on Suburbans since the beginning of Suburbans. The Suburbans have been around for like 50 years. Now, that's a nod to what the purpose of this vehicle is. It is designed for families. Families with horse trailers, families with toy trailers, families with boat trailers. It will tow up to 8,400 pounds. It will also, for idiots like me, that get one with less than 1,000 miles and take it off-road and one day make it look like this because of the rear suspension. Now, we have talked about rear suspension in other films, namely Volkswagen films. I am certain General Motors could develop an independent rear suspension that will do all the things that we've just shown you, but at what cost? At least $2,500 to $5,000 more. Now I know I told you guys that this is not our first rodeo off-road. We've done it a couple times before, but actually it is our first rodeo off-road with an electric power steering system. And the main benefit, on-road at least, is MPG. I mean, it's very simple. If you're gonna catalog the top 10 things you need for off-road, MPG would be about number 25. So why would you put electric power steering in something like this? And it's pretty simple. The majority of time that this vehicle is going to be used, it's going to be used on road. So let's try a little bit of an experiment, which means don't try this at home. It's not so much just a hydraulic versus electric power assist. Like you go to a track school with a sports car, and the first thing they teach you is steering inputs. Actually, not to do too many steering inputs, because they don't want you to disturb the plane of motion of the vehicle, because that's when you get off the line and that's when you also go off the track. Here, it's the same kind of logic. You don't want to have too many steering inputs, but what's changed is the roadway. You don't have a roadway. So the vehicle will be disturbed, the plane of motion will be disturbed by rocks, dips, water crossings, and that's when you have to do your corrections. But you don't want to overcorrect too much and then have to get to a situation where you correct again, and then it's a matter of like catching an edge like you're skiing. See, now look at this. Okay, I'm going to go down the rut. The rut is steering the car for me right now. So forget about the over assist. The rut is doing all the steering for me, but still pretty straight. Now I'm starting to overcorrect to the wrong side. Let's get back in the rut again. Oh, look at that. And now we just caught the edge. Let's go forward. I don't want to say it's not precise. It's just not giving you the confidence that you would have, say, from the hydraulic steering, which is why I'd love to see a setting where you could adjust the steering for off-road so you get a little bit more weight in your steering, so you have that same benefit that you would get out of the hydraulic steering, but in this case, you could still keep the benefit of MPG on road. Big Bear Lake, California is located in the San Bernardino mountain range, which is located in the San Bernardino National Forest. For those of you that are thinking of the Hollywood Hills or the Hollywood sign, that's in the Santa Monica mountain range, which is 50 miles that way in Los Angeles. San Bernardino is 25 miles that way. I'd love to sit here and tell you a story that someone found a very cute little bear in a lake, but that's not the case. It turns out it was discovered by the second mayor of Los Angeles before he was the second mayor of Los Angeles. He was originally from Tennessee. He was a fur trapper on his way to China, got caught up in Los Angeles, then became a bounty hunter. Oh, actually, interesting side note about this guy. He was also the grandfather of the U.S. Army and Allied commander in World War II, General George S. Patton. But before all that, he was charged with finding a bunch of horse thieves who were the Indians that were indigenous to this region here. So he basically left San Bernardino and drove 2 teams up here to find the horse thieves. And they indeed found the horses, but they also found bears and came back with grizzly bear pelts. But it still didn't become the recreation destination we know today until one of its early residents went to New York and was so fascinated by buses. Thought that would be great in Big Bear Lake, California. Came back, bought a bunch of white trucks, basically put chairs in the back of them, and transported people on the weekends from Los Angeles and San Bernardino to Big Bear Lake, California. Oh, interesting thing about the seats. This is one of the last holdouts, this car, in that in the LS model, the base model, you can get this with a bench seat. It's like the last vehicle, I think, on the planet, or at least in the US, you can get a bench seat with. The Impala previously was the last car, passenger car, you can get a bench seat in the US. But interesting, this is the first SUV to have like a center airbag, that's what they call it. But if you get the bench seat, there's no center airbag. So either bench seat or center airbag, pick your choice. Also, its proximity to Hollywood, it became popular for filming. So this may look familiar to you from Old Yeller, also War Games, and for those of you Chevy and John Cusack fans, Big Bear Lake, California is where he drives the just freshly restored 69 Camaro with his super hot French girlfriend to chase the baddie down the hill. I don't know how a high school student could restore a derelict Camaro to that level, but that took place in Big Bear Lake, California. So here's where it gets a little bit more interesting, where we get to our first water crossing. I can't say that this has the same water fjording skills as, say, a Range Rover, which kind of comes up almost to the door. And that was fine. We got through there, no problem whatsoever. We got another water crossing coming up here. But this one is interesting. It's an elevation change, a sharp turn, and a water crossing. So this is where you want to go a little bit slower. Notice the angle of attack is much sharper here than the first one, and this is where this vehicle really is not designed for off-roading. So notice what I've got here is a lower front bumper. This thing is obviously designed for more on-road, so I don't want to push it too much, because otherwise I'm going to scrape the hell out of the front bumper, or the lower part of the bumper, which smartly is rubber. But for those of you that live at like border crossings, San Diego, Texas, places like that, I'm sure you guys have seen those U.S. Border Patrol Tahoes that are outfitted in their livery. If you notice, it's not just the white with the green stripes down the side. The whole front bumper is different. They removed the factory front bumper and put on a much different bumper cover that sits significantly higher so you can deal with angles of attack like that without having to damage the vehicle. I know I've billed this as we're going to take a $60,000 truck off-road, but really that hasn't been the experiment. It's we're going to take a $60,000 truck off-road and run ethanol through it. So in reality, what's been going through the veins is fancy corn oil. So what's the fuel economy now? Well, Barack Hussein says with unleaded fuel, this thing goes 14 to 21. That's the range. Up here, I bested 20 mpg on the highway. Around town, I was doing about 15. And believe it or not, throughout this off-road stuff, we've been doing 11 to 11.5 miles per imperial gallon. So calling all Tahoe Suburban owners, basically anybody that's got any kind of body-on-frame 4x4 like this, I want you guys to tell me what you do with these things, specifically with your families. Like, where do you take it? How often do you take it there? And what vehicle do you have? Put that in the comments below, or better yet, hit us up on Facebook, MotoManTV, all one word, and where we post this episode, let's start a discussion going, because I'd love to find out what you guys are doing with these things, because I'd love to get a movement going of the people, the families that buy these things. Let's stop taking them to ballet, to piano recitals, to karate, and let's take them off-road. So click here to watch one of our 250 other episodes. Click here to subscribe. And can we ask you guys a favor? Can you watch these within the first 36 hours? Because it gets us more views, which gets us more dollars, which gets you more episodes. And of course, follow us, MotoManTV, all one word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I'll see you guys next time.